Hello friends, very good evening to all of you, all those who are present in this webinar session. My name is Dr. Saurabh Tiwari, and in this webinar session I'm going to talk about the driving growth factors and the employment opportunity through logistics. See, if we go into deep details of this webinar session, I will first define something related to what logistics is all about, its importance, its contribution to the country GDP, how and what we are offering at UPES, the current employment scenarios, and various avenues where a student can get opportunity after completing this course. So I will first start with the definition of logistics. See, if we talk about logistics, logistics is not new, but in the current scenario, the definitions are changing day by day. If we go some 100 years of back, it is said that Alexander was known as a great logistician, and the definition of logistics actually come from arms and ammunition and the military. Its real definition actually started from the science of calculating and computing. But with the globalization, with the industrialization, things have changed, and similarly, the definition of logistics has also changed. Now, in current scenario, if we talk about logistics, we define logistics as a business planning framework for the management of material, services, information, and capital flows. My dear friends, it is very important to understand that here we are talking logistics not only in terms of tangible assets which is moving from one place to another, which is we call it as material, but also along with that we transfer services, we require logistics for services, we transfer information from one place to another. For that we required information transfer sharing, and also the capital flows, the funds which are transferring. If we talk in current scenario, what has happened in terms of with the government has stopped on the usage of 1,500 currency notes, and within 1 day time you have to replenish the entire banks across the country, whether it is in a big city or in a small city. How you are going to transfer these currencies from the printing press of RBI to the each and every locations of the banks which are at different parts of the country? You can imagine the complexity involved in that. And that's why it is said that it includes the increasingly complex information, communication, and control systems required in today's business environment. You can easily understand how complex is the current business environment, where within 1 day time we are required to transfer all the currency which is going actually in transferring in the physical form from the RBI printing press to the each and every locations of the country. If we come back and talk in terms of business scenario, in terms of manufacturing part, some of the activities which are involved in logistics are customer service, how we are going to support and service the customer, the warehousing activity, the control of the inventory. If we talk about inventory, inventory is considered as the main problematic area for all different type of manufacturing firms. On one side, if we have low amount of inventory, we are actually not able to satisfy our customer. But on the other side, if we have too much inventory, the working capital involved in the business will be too high, and directly it impacts our profitability. So we have to manage both a minimum amount of inventory so that our production process can't help. And for that, we require the support of logistics people. Then other function areas are transportations, material handling, forecasting, and purchasing. Forecasting is also important because until unless we have a proper forecast, we can't know what exactly and what amount of inventory we actually have to manage, whether it is in the form of raw material, whether it is in the form of finished goods. We have to manage and maintain the amount of inventory in different forms, and for that we require the tools which is actually being provided by the forecasting. And along with that, the purchasing team has also to play a significant role. If we talk in the current scenario of the Indian GDP and the logistic contribution to GDP, it is almost 13% of GDP. And India's spending on logistic is both significant as well as insufficient or inefficient. Why I'm talking about, because logistic with the manufacturing growing, we require higher support of logistics in order to mobilize our inventory. But in the current scenario with the expansion plans, the logistics which we have is also inefficient. Now, these inefficiencies are largely a result of India's diverse geographic conditions, poor core infrastructure, complex tax policies, and supply side constraints. These are some of the key factors which actually make the situation more worse, all of which results in higher transportation cost, higher storage area required, and increase in the service cost. However, India's logistics story is indeed an attractive one. How it is growing? Based on its rapidly growing economy, the increase in outsourcing of logistics, steady supply side changes, significant government investments in core infrastructure projects, and landmark changes in tax and regulatory policy. And with the current implementation of the GST policy, you can easily understand how government is going to support the mobilization and the movement of goods from one place to another. Now, it is this attractiveness, along with the potential to tide over inefficiencies, that has driven several foreign companies to enter into the Indian market. And they find Indian economy as a growing economy, and there are ample of opportunities where they can increase their business, and that is within a short span of time. In market prominence in a sector that has historically been highly fragmented and dominated by mostly the local players. If we talk about a glimpse into various industry sectoral highlights that anticipated upsurge in trade and commerce and the consequent growth in the need of a strong logistic industry. Some of the fact figures if we discuss, India's nominal GDP is expected to grow at US dollar 3.6 trillion by 220 and at an annual growth rate of almost 9%. By 2030, India crude steel production is expected to increase by a factor of 4. So what we are going to multiply it by 4 times. That similarly, if we require steel, we also require cement in order to support the infrastructure. The demand for cement in the country is expected to double by 2030. Agriculture output, although reduced in size as a percentage of the economy, is expected to grow from 207 million metric tons to 295 million metric tons by 2020. With the increase in the number of population, we also require to feed those people who are living in our country, and for that we have to support our agriculture output. If we talk about textile industry, it is going to expected to triple from US 78 billion currently to almost US 2020 billion by 2020. The share of organized retail is expected to increase from 5% currently to 24% by 2020. India's industrial energy consumption is expected to double by 2020, and in this scenario, the country will need to mine 2 billion tons of coal by 2030. And with the current Coal India Limited, they have started increasing their production capacity and transport 75% of the mined coal from the mining areas to different power plants and to other areas as per the requirement. Further, around 30% of total transported coal will have to be imported through ports. So not only internal domestic consumption will be matched through the production from the Coal India, but also we need to import coal from different countries, from Indonesia, from Australia, from other African countries. We have to bring coal, and that is going to be transported through ships. There are various ships through which we are going to bring coal to our nearby port, and from there it need to be carried to the desired location. Finished consumer goods both imported and those produced in India will have to be transported to the country's middle class consumers, which by 2030 are expected to increase almost by fourfold from the current middle class population of 160 million. Now, in order to all those facts and figures which I have described over here, we have to require to maintain and manage a sustain and drive economic growth, and for which the movement of goods associated with a mature economy will require a vastly superior service sector as well as physical logistic infrastructure. Now, the transformation of India's logistic landscape need a clear, long-term and sustainable vision encompassing initiatives that are proactive rather than reactive to leverage India's economic potential in future. Much has to be moved around the various opportunities that the Indian logistic industries offer and the challenges it faces. Yet is perhaps an opportunity time to dive deep into the certain specific developments, those in the pipeline as well as those that must be focused upon in the near future, that could potentially overhaul the way India moves, stores, and delivers. If we talk about basically from the transportation and the storage side, basically we divide it into subsectors, and within that subsectors we have subsegments. So transportation, if we talk, transportation is movement by either passenger and freight transport through either rail or road. Same way, passengers and freight transport by sea, by coastal and inland waterways. India government is also starting IWT, which is a national water highway through which we are going to transport most of the commodities, as a result of which our transportation cost is going to be reduced by multiple folds, as well as the carbon emission in the environment is also being going to be reduced. And similarly, passenger and freight air transport. If we talk about warehousing and storage, that includes transport activities for transportation. Courier activities is another subset and followed by packaging activities. If we talk specifically from the packaging activities also required specific technical expertise area. You can't package two different items which are different in nature in the same packing. You have to require altogether different packaging area or activity. For example, you can't pack in the same biscuits and chips in the same wrapper, and also their transportation need to be done in altogether different way because of the nature, because of the smell, because of the other features or the characteristics of the product. You required a specific technical expertise on the packaging activities. So these are some of the transports and storage options and their subsectors and subsegments. If we talk about the range of services which are offered by the logistics sector, we can actually divide into three activities. One is transportation, another is warehousing, and third is my value added services. Now within transportation, the modes which are normally being used are air, water, rail, and road. If we talk about road, then we talk about trucking industry. So we talk about FTL and LTL. Now what exactly is FTL? FTL basically means full truckload and LTL means less than truckload. Same way, in order to move some consignments which are not of regular size and shape, you have seen that big transformers are moving from one place to another. Now these transformers when being moved, it required a special carriage in order to transport this. So this is called as ODC, over dimensional cargo. Then we have to require last mile services, express cargo, equipment management through trailers and through cranes. If we talk about rail, we have container train operators, also called as CTO, which are required in order to transport containers. Bulk and break bulk transports. Passenger train cargo, example SLR. Infrastructure and ancillaries, example DMIC, wagon productions. If we talk about water, then we have our shipping, container, bulk cargo, port and port management, which involves my dredging, berthing of the ship at the port, port services like pilotage, towage, and stevedoring, and coastal shipping. Same way, if we talk about air cargo operation, then we have our registered infrastructure into airports and aircrafts. The red colors basically shows level of investor activities. Now those which are in red colors are basically required high investor activities, which are lesser lighter required a lesser one, and followed by the lowest one. If we talk about warehousing, in road we required godowns, modern warehouses, express cargo hub, LTL transport shipment containers, road linked logistics, and food parks. For rail, we required inland container depots, FTW, rail-linked MMLPs, bulk cargo terminals, custom bonded warehouses, yards, and covered warehouses. For water, we required container freight station, also known as CFS, port-based yards and covered warehouses, tanks, farms for POL, shipyards build, repair, custom bonded warehouses. Tanks are generally required in order to keep a liquid item, for example, in terms of crude oil and other byproducts. For air, we required air cargo centers, ACCs, express cargo hubs. If you talk about value added services, we required cold chain, 3PL and 4PL, that is third party logistics and 4 party logistics. VA value added services in terms of packaging, tracking and tracing the items, JIT just in time, and insurance. Relocation services, courier services, and reverse logistics. If we talk about roads for value added services, then we have our freight consolidations, LCL, FCL, container stuffing, and de-stuffing, custom handling, rail-led 3PL services. LCL basically stands for less than container load, and FCL is full container load. If we talk about water, then we have our custom clearances, LCL consolidation through NVOCC, non-vessel operated common carriers, container stuffing, de-stuffing, buffer yard storage, pre-delivery inspection, which is called as PDI, port-led 3PL services. For air part, we have our air cargo and freight services, freight forwarding, and custom clearances. So, and you can see the entire range of services which are basically offered by the logistics sectors. Some other, if you further divide into subcategories, that it involves a complex change of activities spread across multiple modes of transportation and infrastructure points, starting from sourcing and intermediation to outbound cargo handling and domestic receipt and inbound cargo handling and international receipt. So actually everything starts with exporter and producers, go to the local factory oblique yard storage. If it requires to move, then we require express cargo agent, freight forwarder, trucking company, and 3PL oblique 4PL agents. In talking in terms of my outbound cargo handling and domestic, if it is going through air cargo, then express cargo agent need to send the material to the air cargo center where it need to be transit through airport. Then if it is being moved through local warehouse or through the storage, then we require freight forwarders who can move the material to the central warehouse. It can move to the inland container depot if it is being stuffed in a container, need to be moved to a container freight station. Then the custom house agent should come and check, and it goes to the outgoing port and then straight away to the shipping line. At the local warehouse pickup point, then we have our consumers. Basically it is required for bulk and big bulk cargo. If it is for outbound international cargo handling, then it should go to the international airport. For shipping, it should go to the incoming port. For CFS, container freight station oblique ICD, custom house agent, central warehouses, and then move to my local warehouse oblique pickup point and importers. So these are some of the value added services which are being offered by the logistic companies, which is nothing but a complex change of activities which are spread across the entire, from the sourcing and intermediation to the inbound cargo handling and international receipt. Now, why logistics is important? We have seen what are the activities which are being performed in logistics. Now, we also have to understand its importance and its criteria, which actually make it important, and how, without which you can't imagine anything moving across any part of the world, whether it is between one country to another country or from one continent to another continent. It is very much important. So, logistic management has become prominent and acknowledged as a critical success factor in establishing competitive advantage in several developed countries. Now, if we talk about in terms of a developed countries, where customers is demanding, they are ready to pay any amount, but they are not ready to wait. Logistic is the only critical factors or the deciding factors which makes your company competitive, or which provide a competitive advantage to your company as compared to your competitors. Expansion of international trade and globalization strategies of many companies has increased importance of logistics management. With the increased number of outsourcing business where you have your suppliers in one part of the world, the supplier supplies another part of the world, you are doing manufacturing in third country, and actually it is being going to be consumed in fourth country. Now you can understand the complexity involved in the business. Aggregate cost of logistics amount up to 30% of total landed cost. If we talk about the aggregate logistic cost for bulk items, it can be as high as up to 30% of the cost of getting the material in hand. Giving careful attention to logistic management results in reduction in cost and thus better performance for companies. Logistic industry indirectly or directly contributes estimated to about 25% to most countries' GDPs and employs several million people because the range of activities which are being performed under logistics are immense, and the modes which we are going to transport the material from one point to another is also very high. So we have to understand its importance and how it is going to impact to the GDP. But what does logistic management basically involves? If in broader terms we try to understand, logistic management effective actually involves day-to-day management activity of your transportation, storage and warehousing, inventory stock control, packaging and distribution. And in order to attain or to do all these activities, you require a greater amount of integrations. So logistic not only integrates with and is essential to many areas of business operations, such as your retailing business is all together depending upon your logistics, your production, how much amount of inventory you are going to produce, you're going to which market to cater, from where you are going to get the raw material at a cheaper cost. Along with that, you have to look after the quality aspects, the importing and exporting activity, project management, and forecasting. It looks very easy to manage the inventory and to manage the logistical activities, but there are certain challenges associated with it. If I going to discuss some of the challenges, the changing demographics as India continues its transformation into a manufacturing and service-led economy, growing migration towards urban areas is expected. It is anticipated that more than 60% of India urban population will be concentrated in 20 to 25 urban clusters by 2030. That means more and more number of persons are going to leave the rural belt and will come to settle in the cities. Now, settling in the cities means their requirement is going to be fulfilled through the intermediaries, and in order to support that, you required logistic, and this becomes the more challenging activity. Against this backdrop, logistic support infrastructure in India's metros is inadequate for serving existing trade needs. Challenges ranges from the availability of assets to congestion, regulation and monitoring. In future, industrial clusters will need dedicated freight corridors. What we have, our current government is going to start the new freight corridors, such as the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridors with high-speed connectivity to key ports and urban centers. Now, these corridors and access routes will likely help keep the cost of supplying goods and services to these urban centers either low or manageable. The growth of urban centers in size and number would necessitate the need for a proactive approach in logistic planning to sustain growth. Further, it will be imperative to oversee that the provision of logistic infrastructure for upcoming infrastructure cluster is not at the expense of fulfilling the transport needs or India's expanding urban clusters. The other challenge is evolving requirement of trade. It is anticipated that the surge in trade will demand enhanced sophistication in logistic infrastructure and services across mode. As international national standards are introduced in a competitive, service-oriented environment, existing infrastructure will likely become obsolete. So we require advanced infrastructure in order to support that. Growth in the domestic manufacturing and retail segments have given impetus to the demand for efficient warehouse management services, also called as WMS. However, warehousing continues to see little investment. If we see from the current spending on organized warehousing in India constitute 9% of the total logistics spending as against 25% in the US. Existing small warehouses need to be replaced by the large, and with the implementation of the GST, they are fast environment changing where they will be required more modern warehouses that as compared to the small warehouses which we have, and that incorporate global standards such as the tall design, modular racking system, palletization, and the use of automation and IT. The growth of niche industries will likely necessitate value-added services such as cold chain and warehousing, packaging, track and trace service. Existing infrastructure needs to be upgraded to increase throughput. For example, average containers handled per ship per hour is 18 in India as compared to 28 international. So we are very much lag behind as compared to the international standard. Further, the average distance traveled per truck per day is 200 kilometers, which is half what is being as considered as the international standard, which is almost 400 kilometers per day. Trade would require commodity and geography specific storage and transportation assets. Without these, industry investment potential in other parts of the economy is likely to face roadblocks. The third challenge which we are facing is increasingly skewed modal mix. India's logistics sector is currently not only constrained by lack of infrastructure, it perhaps even more restricted by the misuse of transportation modes for certain types of commodity, as well as limit on the free use of transportation modes for other. In terms of volumes involved, cargo in India can be classified in a pyramid-like fashion, with each category entailing distinct logistical consideration. The optimal movement by freight by matching cargo categories with transportation mode will be crucial for expanding volumes across categories. The lopsided utilization of transportation infrastructure, such as roads and rails, as is currently is totally too much stressed, and these networks and add to inflating cost and turnaround times. Driving the best possible selection of modes to lower congestion and facilitates the smooth movement of cargo is the need of the hour. This is what most of the countries and their GDP and their investment on logistics. If you see, China and India is almost 13 to 15% of their logistic cost to GDP, but their share in 3PL in overall logistics is less than 10%, as compared to US, where the GDP contribution by logistics is 9.9%, but the share of 3PL is 57%. Europe, it is almost same as US, which is almost 10%, and 3PL share is 30 to 40% as compared with Japan, which is 11.4%, and share of 3PL in overall logistics is 80%. So if you find that most of the developed countries logistic cost to GDP is lesser and their share of 3PL in overall logistics is also high. This is facts on the quantum of logistics spends. It is believed that India it is going to be INR 90 trillion globally, whereas for India it is 4 trillion in India. Average sum of the comparisons, average surface freight in cents per kilometer, what is the expenditure? Europe it is 5.5, Japan it is 3.7, Canada it is only 2, and India it is almost 7. So it is very high in terms of cent per kilometer. Uh, Estimated economic cost due to delays at check. For multi-axle it is 895 INR million, for heavy it is 7660, and for light it is 887. Turnaround time at ports, Singapore it is 7 hours only, Hong Kong again it is 7 hours, but for India it is 84 hours, so it is also very high. Average inventory days which is being used in order to transship the the movement of the goods. In Brazil it is 19.9, China it is 24.2, and India it is 32.5. Some of the other facts which led growth of logistic industries. So growth in logistic outsourcing, greater economic activities, GDP growth projected at more than 8%, increasing trade, greater outsourcing of manufacturing. We required increased outsourced manufacturing activities being seen in auto ancillary, textile and pharma sectors. Entry at MNCs of different companies are considered India as a hub, ushering an established practice of outsourcing logistic service, better enabling environment which can be through improved infrastructure, enabling regulations, greater potential to outcome logistics, cost saving leading to increased competitiveness, greater supply chain flexibility and responsiveness, value added service, greater focus on the core, increased availability and organized service sector. In India, most of the cargo movement is through road. So if we talk about road, the transportation sector in India is still dominated by the road segment. Over the past 10 years, stung by unchanging industry fragmentation, mostly being basic structures or shreds, and are gradually evolving to world-class standards with high bay modular racking systems, palletization, and use of the automation and information technology. The service side of logistics is also evolving from freight forwarding dominance to more evolved players such as third and fourth party logistic player, whereby many service providers are promising customers end-to-end cargo movement capabilities while they attempt to establish asset ownership in key parts and cargo value chain. Now, if we talk about what we are offering at UPS or industry overview of UPS, in UPS at College of Management, we are offering this undergraduate program along with the PG, or which is called the MBA in Logistics and Supply Chain. So, if we're strictly talking about the undergraduate program, UPS emerged as an innovative institution offering industry-focused specialized graduate, postgraduate, and doctoral programs in the key areas of energy, infrastructure, transportation, information, technology, and legal process. What is the basic purpose of developing these? The basic objective or the purpose is to develop domain specific and competent technocrats, professionals and managers who are ready to join the core industry from day one. UPS has also been associated as a member of the International Association of University, which is known as IAU. This enables the university to participate in IAU annual conferences, the general conferences, specialized workshops, seminars, expert meetings, and various other events. Now, why logistic management preferred over general BBA? As I already told you, we believe in industry ready personals. Now, this program provides an exposure to students on the various aspects of logistic industries along with general business management, which actually help them to understand and develop skills to manage strategic challenges facing these sectors. So what we are teaching in this course, some of the general programs along with the domain specific courses like business economics or business organization, business mathematics, accounting, communication, business computing, organizational behavior, financial management, human resource, operation and materials management. Along with that, some domain specific courses such as introduction to logistics, supply chain, multimodal transportation, logistic information system, supplier relationship management, which is the advanced version of purchasing, retail logistics, logistic planning and strategy, logistics in manufacturing sector. So these are some of the generic courses and the domain specific courses, and we try to actually bring a blend of both these type of courses which are being offered to the students. If we talk about the career path and opportunities, the logistics is immense. It depends upon the nature and interest of the student, what he want to join after completing this course. He can be part of the manufacturing firms, he can be part of merchandising firm, he can also join a third party logistics as a transportation firm, as in the education organization business, in government agencies, service institution, consulting firms. So ample of opportunities starting from the service side to the manufacturing side to the service side to the IT to the consultancy. You can join any of the areas depending upon the requirement, because logistics fitment is everywhere. It is only your interest, your understanding of the particular domain or function which you particularly want to join. So some of the career paths which can focus on a wide variety of functional areas. You can work as a logistic planning and analyst. You can work in transportation side of the business, in warehouse operations, inventory planning, purchasing and materials management. You can also be part of international logistics, production planning and operations, supply chain management, customer service management, information system and control, logistic services, marketing and sales, logistic engineering. These are the avenues or the functional areas where a student can opt in after completing this course. So some of the job profiles can be related to analyst, as it is related to consultant, customer service, logistic engineers, logistic managers, material managers, production managers. You can work as purchasing manager, supply chain manager, system analyst, system support manager, transportation manager. You can work as vendor manager, inventory coordinator, warehouse operation management. So the profile ranges from analyst to ultimately the hardcore operation jobs, and the growth trajectory can be anything depending upon your urge, your understanding, your need to learn, you need to flourish. Sky is the limit for those who join this industry, and with the expansion and with the growth of the Indian economy, will we are finding that there will be a huge dearth of logistic personals, and because company is expanding in any way, there is huge FDI investment is going to happen in India. More and more multinationals are going to establish their manufacturing base, and for that they require the support of engineers, of support of logisticians, other technical skills required in order to run and support the business. So, with this, I conclude my session. If you have any queries or clarification, you can write it down to me. I'm here to support you. Uh, if you have any queries, kindly write it to me. I will just try to answer your queries, any questions, any doubts if you have. I request if you have any queries, I'm here to support you. If you have any doubts, any clarification required. Yeah. Okay, thank you for hearing and listening to this webinar session. You can give me, if you have any queries, you can write it down. You can approach to me. Thanks for joining this session. Thank you.